Hey guys, this is Nick with the Forever Change podcast. I want to thank you so much for listening to this podcast and let you know one of the ways that you can get involved with what we're doing here behind the scenes at Forever Changed, and that's to let you know about our Patreon. And what we're doing with our Patreon is giving you full access behind the scenes to everything we're doing, from early content all the way to our Zoom Bible studies with our community based all around the world, from Europe to here in the States to even Australia as well. And so one way that you can do that is go over to patreon.com/Nick and Chelsea, sign up for one of our packages and tiers there and get plugged in with our community. I hope that you do it, and I cannot wait to see you there. But from here on out, I hope that you enjoy this episode.
Hey friends, welcome back to the Forever Changed podcast. We are so excited for this episode, and I was just telling Nick before we started this podcast that we say that on literally every one, but I think it reigns true every time. And we actually asked a lot of you guys on YouTube and on Instagram anything that you guys have been wanting, like itching to hear on the podcast, and we came across a very similar theme. And so this episode is not going to be answering those questions yet. It'll be in our next week podcast. What did we notice in all of these questions?
Yeah, everybody was saying that they felt like something, or they were feeling something. I feel like my relationship with God is dry, or I don't feel like praying, or I don't feel God is close. I don't feel the peace of God. And so the theme there was these inward feelings that people were having. Yeah. And I think it would be good for us to talk about that. Of course, we can't resonate with every single situation and scenario there. Right. But we can understand, the basic premise of what it means to feel like or not feel like something. Like, I don't feel the peace of God, or I feel like I should be doing this, but I'm not sure, that sort of thing. And so just navigating through that and kind of finding our way through these emotions together, I think would make for a really, really good conversation, a rich conversation that, I think, by no means are we the first people to talk through this, but I think that it would be good, even for our sake, just, us together and kind of everybody else is listening in sort of at the same time, to walk through this.
Our favorite thing here is to chat through some stories or something that really changed us or other people recently, because our podcast name is Forever Changed. So we were talking in the car on the way here, and we were asking each other, has there been anything lately that has like either rocked our world or somebody we know? And Nick was mentioning about a trip that he had taken to Texas, and he's a part of this group of guys and girls that are being mentored for about a year. You can explain it a little bit more, but he was just saying how he saw a lot of life change there.
Yeah. So. Quick plug. June 25th and 26th, come to the Cotton Bowl in Dallas, Texas for Together 22. Just go on Google and type in Together 22 and you can find out all about it, but would love for you and some of your friends to come out. But so there's this cohort of young people that I've been really, really fortunate to be a part of, called the Pulse 100. It's led by a good friend of mine. His name's Nick, and he leads a ministry called Pulse. And so he gathered 100 young evangelists for a year and put us through programs and different mentors and leaders speaking into and over our lives. And it's been a really, really awesome thing. So if you're a young preacher or a young evangelist, someone who is needing to be mentored and discipled, there's another opportunity to get involved in the same thing coming up. I'd love for you to reach out and maybe learn more about how to do that. But anyway, we were out in Dallas and we're at the Cotton Bowl. And, again, leaders are coming out, different leaders from different churches, and just coming and speaking life into us and coming and pouring into us. And it was really, really powerful. And so we saw a ton of life change, not like necessarily like people getting saved or anything like that. But we did see a lot of people being set free of stuff that maybe they had been holding on to, or gathering freedom from addictions that had long been holding them bondage. So it was really, really powerful. And I was really fortunate that I got to be there and to see people's lives and realities being forever changed. in that very, very instant. So it was awesome.
Yeah. You have any like particular like story or like personal moment or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to put people's
No,
business out there
not
or
sharing any
anything.
names or anything.
But yeah, like saw a ton of people find freedom from previous trauma. So whether that looked like relationships or family dynamics or anything like that, saw a lot of healing from that, and then also a lot of freedom from stuff like porn, stuff like different, aside from that, I feel like that's the one big addiction that everybody always talks about. But I mean, there's a lot of other stuff too, like self-seeking interests all the time with friendships and relationships. And that's honestly been one of the big things that I've seen change in recently, like even in my own way of thinking, is like relationships and friendships are not so that I can get from people. It's not so that I can, develop a relationship or a friendship with somebody just so I can receive something or like they have a connection that I need. Like, sure, it's okay to ask and call on a favor sometimes when you need that, but man, relationships are really to give, and it's a place to serve, and it's a place to love someone else, and maybe ask what they're praying for and see if that's a need that God has equipped you to meet. And so that's been really cool, just having different perspective shifts and seeing people's lives be changed, like actually changed, not like, oh, I felt really great and then we left and it died off, but like being in a group message with these people and seeing how this change has played itself out weeks and months later. It's been super cool.
That's great. Yeah, I wasn't asking that question to pry. I was just more so, I think a lot of people love specifics of like, oh, they were healed of that too. Like maybe I can be,
Yeah.
But I want to kind of go through some of the questions that we've been asked recently to give you guys a little bit of the pulse on the feelings and the emotions, I guess, that people have been experiencing with questions they have. Oh, wow. This is exactly in the area, and it was just posted 24 minutes ago in the area that we've been talking about. It says, I've been really struggling with keeping a consistent relationship with God because my feelings are into it. Any advice on how to overcome this problem? I feel like that's exactly spot on with
we
what
didn't
we're
even
talking
see that
about.
before we started recording, which is the funniest thing ever.
And then also I'll share a little bit of a story because I want to have this like on the back of our mind as we're having this conversation. This girl said, how to believe prayer is worthwhile and effective when someone you love has suffered. My mom was in a coma for 2 weeks after a horrible car accident and then passed away. There were hundreds of people boldly praying for her healing. I'm feeling lost right now. Thank you. So I am terribly sorry for your loss. That just seems like it was very abrupt and
tragic.
Yeah. But as far as the feelings on like everything.
Yeah, she's feeling lost.
And
I don't blame her.
Struggling with God because feelings aren't in it. I was talking to Nick in the car on the way here, and we have a lot of great conversations when we're on the way to record podcasts. We just try to get like in the mode of recording. And I was talking about how a friend and I were having coffee recently, and we were talking about how statistically and just as a proven fact that women are much more deep feelers than men are. And a lot of these questions are from women. And I can't help but think, like, God designed us to deeply feel things. But what happens when the areas that we care most about in our life, we don't have those intense, deep feelings for, or a feeling that we once had is no longer there? You could say the same thing about marriage. Like, what if in my marriage right now, I don't feel as in love with you as I did in the beginning? With every area of life, and as we surveyed like our personal feelings and the way that we've navigated this, we were just kind of thinking of your guys' hearts and situations, and we were like, okay, so what is it like to be, a young person in our generation with all the distractions that we have, and having almost every single person online at least tell you that a lot of things are based on your feelings. So in a way, it can be challenging to be like countercultural in that way to not follow your feelings in everything that you do. So I think we should touch on that for a second. Like, that's the direction that we would like to live our lives in, of not always following our feelings or not taking our feelings as seriously as, like, if I feel a certain way, I'm going to go with that. Because there's a difference between the peace of God and our feelings. And I think we should make that differentiation too. But
I think there's also a difference in discernment versus
Mhm.
feelings.
Right.
I think a lot of, me included, totally, would have said some years ago, probably not even some years ago, probably like a year ago, I would have equated the way I feel and the discernment that God has gifted me with, gifted every believer with. I'm not special. You have the exact ability to discern things as I do, if you're in Christ. But I would have equated them to be the same thing. And they're absolutely not the same thing. Discernment is like God giving me direction and a gift in my soul, like the deepest part of me, about where and what I'm supposed to do. And then feelings are just little things that prompt up here and there. One thing I've been really passionate about lately, Chelsea will testify if she needs to, is aviation. I mean, my dad was a pilot, just a private pilot, and we did it for fun and recreation and stuff. And my mom would join him, and we'd go all over the place together. It was so much fun. And so I've recently really gotten into flying. Been watching all the flying videos, been looking at all the different resources and what I need to do in order to go and get my private license. However, a private license costs about $12,000. And so if I let my feelings override what my reality actually is, then I would be broke and have a pilot's license. And so if we're not taking like a risk assessment on the way that we're feeling and what that could cost us and what, like, playing that out, 10 steps further, then I think that we're just really easily influenced. And I think that we really buy our own hype a lot of times. We feel certain things and we think that because we feel it, it must be true, or it must be right, or it must be reality. And I would argue, not some of the time, I would argue most of the time, that is not the case. There are those instances where, hey, you're feeling something, it's like, I don't know about that, or like, I think that we should go for it.
Yeah.
And, check that with God.
And what you were saying with discernment and having
exactly.
the Spirit of God in you sometimes will produce feelings in you, but they shouldn't be the leading driven force that's
so let's talk about that a little bit. I think that would be helpful for some people. Like, how do you differentiate God giving you discernment versus you just feeling something? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's what you and I talk about a lot, of like submitting your feelings to God, like not acting
what does that look
quickly out of emotion. So let's say, what kind of scenario could we give? You just gave one about aviation and getting your pilot's license. Well, let's say lack of feeling. So this girl that just said, I am feeling lack in my relationship with God. I'm not feeling right in that area.
And so let's define that. Like, what does lack even look like? That probably looks like, I don't want to read my Bible. I don't necessarily want to go to church. I probably don't like have a desire. And it's not that they don't know those are great things. It's the fact that there's probably lack of desire. That's really probably what she is insinuating, which I've totally been there.
Because she can say, I'm feeling lack here. That means that there was once a moment where she felt better in this area. There was more here. And it goes back to kind of what I've been learning lately. Yesterday I was in the gym and I was challenged to do regular push-ups, and I shared this on my Instagram, but I have always done them modified, at least for a few years, and I was having this internal dialogue with myself, and I was like, hey, I'm being challenged to do these intense push-ups, and it wasn't just like regular push-ups. That was the first movement, and then the second was like incline your legs so that there's even more weight on your arms and not modified. And I was just like, can I do that? I was thinking that in my head. I was like, am I strong enough, And then I was thinking on the way home from my workout, after I was able to successfully do the push-ups, even though I told myself, oh, maybe there's not a chance, that I've had a lack mindset in almost every area of my life, thinking that, okay, I'm comparing my old self to this self now of at one point I was stronger, but now I'm older. I've had other things happen to me in my life, and I've just kind of always modified. So maybe I'm not as strong as I used to be, and I won't be as strong as I once was, like
In
in
like your
middle
teenage
school.
years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I've had a tendency, even in my relationship with God, to say those sweet years in high school when I was so intentional about like my time with Him and getting alone with Him, and it just felt so sweet. And comparing that to now, where my life is much more busy. I'm a wife, a mom, I have other obligations, and often my mind is not as clear as it once was when I was younger, meaning there's a lot more to think about and a lot more to do. But that's not an excuse. It is more so, it checks my motives and my heart, and it drives me to ask the question, like, what if it could be better than it once was? Like, what
Yeah.
if we like flipped that
That's
around
good.
and said, what if, even if we're feeling lack or feeling uneasy or not really having any feeling at all, like apathetic, what if it could be better than it once was? What if it could be better than the one moment that you had that was insane with God, that you wish you could get back? Or insert the blank. I don't know. Or fill in the blank. I just feel like we kind of get negative in those areas. And whenever I'm thinking of this girl's question of like when there is lack of feeling with God, leaning into just because there is lack of feeling doesn't mean that there's nothing there. There is an eternal relationship that isn't on the basis of your feelings, thank God. I mean, we've talked about this several times, because I may not always feel like taking care of my child, but I know that I'm going to anyway, and continuing in that relationship will produce more feelings, but it's not the basis of why I continue to care for my child. Does that make sense?
One thing I did want to say is that feelings are not a good gauge indicator of what is actually true, and that feeling low or feeling lack is usually almost always seasonal.
Yeah.
In the Bible, um, one of the themes is a lot of times you'll see a massive harvest in preparation for a famine. And so a lot of times in our relationship with God, specifically there, I think a lot of times these like peak experiences that we have are the very things that will get us through the valley. And so whenever we're really, really up high and like everything is great, like it can't always be that way. But man, I think remembering the faithfulness of God when you're in the valley, like remembering how good and faithful God has been in the past, remembering what He has done, remembering to where He has brought you, even when things like really suck and when it's really low and it's really difficult and it's really hard. I think that's the things that get you through those seasons of time. Because that feeling of lack, I don't think that means that, relationships gonna stop, or like, God's gonna be mad at me forever, or I'm never gonna feel the peace and kindness and love of God again. I think it just means that life has been really hard lately, and stuff has been going on, and it's been really tough. And I think it would be difficult for anyone in seasons like that to necessarily say that everything has been peachy and it's been, a mountaintop experience and like things are just going great. I know very few people. I know a couple, but they're very few, and they've been Christians for a long time, and they have been watching God be faithful over and over again through the hardships of life and the difficult moments of life and the great moments of life too, for a long time. And I think that's what Paul meant when he talks about perseverance produces steadfastness. So perseverance through those low times and through those hard moments is what actually enables you to be steadfast and to run consistently in the long term.
Mm-hmm. So what do you do in moments where, because your feelings aren't necessarily matching your what you wish your desires were, to like read the Bible more, or have a heart that desires to worship, or
Yeah.
like what do you do in that?
I think you do. This is going to sound like I know a lot of people would have a different answer than me, but I'm just going to say that you should just do the best that you can. Do the best that you can. And don't beat yourself up for where you fall short or where you mess up or where you flounder. Just do the best you can and celebrate that. I don't believe that habits formed are necessarily an act of discipline when everything is going great. I think what indicates discipline is when things are tough and you choose to do things anyway. I think that's a much better indicator of how disciplined you are. It's like when it's not ideal, when it's
But
not easy.
why do we always associate discipline with our relationship with God, though? Because I feel like it can feel negative if.
Oh, like the word and like the connotation.
Yeah, well, like trying to force something.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, but I don't think discipline is forcing something. I think it's knowing that something is good and it's beneficial and worthwhile, and that continuing to do so will reap benefit. Going to the gym is not my favorite thing. When I sat down in this chair to record this podcast after doing leg day 2 days ago, um, I, I thought I was gonna cry. And like getting out of the
oh
car, you
yeah.
watched me hobble out of the car walking in here. Going to the gym, friends, full disclosure, is not my favorite thing. And I don't like it. I don't enjoy a single minute of it. It's not fun. I think it's really dumb. I wish God just could have made me like jacked and like live that way from birth to death. But you know what? It's going to take discipline for me to achieve the health and achieve the physicality that I hope to get to. But without that, it's not going to happen. So I
Get
think
yoked.
yeah, hashtag get yoked. I think in the same way with our relationship with God, if we just like hope and dream and like wish and believe and I'm gonna go there and prophesy and speak in tongues about it and like just hope that everything is gonna get better. Like I don't think that's necessarily gonna happen. You might feel some type of way for a couple days, and that's cool. But I think it does take discipline to maintain relationships and to grow and build those relationships further. And so that shouldn't look like a classroom environment where God is expecting me to come in and take my little test as to if I'm going to read my Bible and pray. Like, that's not what it looks like at all. I do those things so that I can know the heart of God, so that I can remember the faithfulness of God, so that I can see what He's done in the past and what I can grow my faith and believe Him to do in the future.
Yeah.
It's not so that, there's a system in check and I have to make sure that I'm fulfilling every little detail and iota to make sure I'm in right status with Him.
Yeah. So submitting our emotions to God. You can say submit all day, but like what does that actually look like? I will give an example of my friends that absolutely they challenge me in every area. Our friends Stephanie and Caleb, they are recently, right now, walking through a season where it is very hard for them to believe and hope in a good future for them and their family because of loss. And so they had gotten pregnant with twins and recently miscarried them. And we're walking through that with them as their friends. And I've watched them, even though their feelings are wrecked, like they are feeling the most sadness and anger and frustration than they've ever felt. And they've admitted that. But what I've watched them do through that is submit their feelings to God and say, God, like, I know you're the only one who can heal me through this and who is a good God despite what has happened to us. And just remembering that God did not desire to take their children away. Like, He did not want them to pass away, but they have the hope and assurance that they will see their babies in heaven,
Yeah.
and they're constantly feeding themselves with like the Word of God and just the promises of Scripture. And they had been trying for like seriously for like 2 years, and it happened. And 1 in 4 women actually miscarry their baby, and I just think that it's not talked about a ton. It's starting to be talked about a little bit more, but Stephanie describes it as feeling like a part of your heart was like ripped out, because our children often, I mean, I can testify, like my child feels like a piece of me, is walking on the earth. And so they are in grief, and you may be in grief or in sadness or frustration. But what you choose to do with that grief and those feelings make all the difference.
Yeah.
Because you can choose to sit in it and like be in a pity mindset, and stay there. But no change will happen from that. You might actually become bitter and angry, and become a person that you've never really wanted to be, because you didn't take that to a place where it is safe, and it can be healed in the process. So
Yeah.
I just thought that they were really great people to bring up for that.
Phenomenal people to bring
Yeah.
up for that. I think to illustrate a picture of what it means to not put your hope and not put your trust necessarily only in how you feel, but in God, they're one of the premier pictures as to what that looks like. And I think like what this looks like in all actuality is, man, I feel like doing this, but what I know to be true, which is Scripture, says this, and the two are contrary. I think what this looks like is like, hey, God, I really feel this way, or I don't feel this way.
I'm
Or,
apathetic.
yeah, or like, I feel like this is what I should be doing, or I don't feel like I even care about this like I thought I did, but I know that this is what's true. And so, because I know that this is what's true, I'm going to put this to the side, and I'm going to trust in what's true. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't feel things.
Or write it off. Yeah.
Right. I'm not saying that we shouldn't explore that and open it up and talk through it and look into its details. And man, why, like, look a little deeper. Why am I feeling that way? What's going on with that? Like, should I be getting help? Should I be having a discussion with somebody? Should I, so look into it, absolutely. Validate it that it's real and that it hurts, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's some other emotion. So I just really don't want you to invalidate something, pass it off, and just be like, nope, I'm gonna just like just believe the Bible. You're like, yes, I want you to trust in the Scriptures, but I also want you to be emotionally healthy. And if you're spending your whole life just invalidating everything that you feel every time you get the chance to, that's going to lead to lack of emotional intelligence, and that's not good either.
I think it's just embracing and accepting how you feel, but also like learning where to take that. I think that is the disconnect that a lot of people have, and it's challenged in every hard moment of our lives where we have intense feelings and we're like, okay, so now what? What do I do with this? And I think that way of life, that walk that you do afterwards, is what makes all the difference. And our friends are huge testimonies of that. If you want other scriptures to kind of guide you through what that looks like, the biggest book I can think of right now is Job. He felt all the feelings. He had everything taken from him, and yet he hoped in the Lord.
Yeah. Lamentations is great too. It's Jeremiah's grief and hurt and heartache through that, and like expressing that to God.
There's a lot about apathy, I believe, too, in the Bible, which is just lack of feeling and lack of desire. So I think that we should do things with our feelings. I think we should be people that respond to the lack or the intensity of these feelings. And I think that's where it starts, is submitting them to God. And kind of practically what that looks like, a lot of times I journal, or in the car, it's just kind of like special to be able to speak out loud to God. I know that you do that too, sometimes even in the shower. Like, people have their places. This might be a corner in your house or on a walk or whatever. It's healthy to also get in the habit of processing your emotions and just processing what you may be thinking in your head, because as we grow as adults, like, if we don't process it, then life just kind of happens to us and we're not really like moving along with it,
Yeah.
you know?
I think I do want to address that whenever so maybe, yeah, you're in the state of, relying maybe too heavily on your feelings right now, but there will come a time when you come out of that and you run into somebody who maybe is walking through the same thing. And the thing to not do is like throw a hand around their shoulder and just be like, just trust God. Like, oh, don't worry about that. Just trust God, or just believe God. Like, that is a really good way to that's a really good way to lead someone to never believing the feelings that they have to be valid in any kind of capacity. And I just don't think that that's a good recipe.
But
I
mourning with people.
I don't know. I also don't think that we should just be so fast to jump the gun to try and give advice to people who are really going through it. I think most of the time, people who are really going through it just need a friend, and they need someone to listen and someone to care.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Scripture says not to go give a host of advice to people who are mourning, but to just mourn with the mourning and to be with them and to care with them and cry with them. And to not show up as a life coach, but just to show up as someone who really cares for them. And so, and if you're someone who's walking through this very sort of season, I just want you to know, like, we really care for you. And it's kind of ironic because this whole podcast has been a bit of advice, but that's the context of this podcast. So if we were in conversation or something, we're not going to talk in the same way that we would here on a studio-based podcast. So I just I really wanted to voice that because I and I'm sure you have too, and maybe some of you listening have as well. I've had people come into my life before when I was really going through it or really hurting and really dealing with a lot and just trying to give me, a textbook of advice and things that I should be doing and trying. And that's not in any capacity what I needed. Maybe I needed that 3 months after those feelings kind of subsided. But in that moment, I just needed someone to care.
Yeah.
And luckily, I have had people come into my life over the years who have been the kind of individuals who care and would lend an ear and not so much advice when I was hurting. But I know that those meant a lot more than the ones who were just trying to tell me everything that I should and shouldn't be doing. Because I wasn't in any kind of headspace or heart space to hear it or to listen to it.
That makes all the difference too, is like being ready to receive advice and that type of wisdom and instruction. And I think that can kind of be hurtful too as a friend if you feel like you're doing the best you can to be there for somebody or be there for a family member, and they act as if they're grateful and thankful, but then they do the complete opposite because maybe they're in a place of trying to heal and they've been in a cycle of like taking their feelings and doing not so wise things with them, but you're not in control of their actions or in the way that they choose to go about healing and working through that. So
just got to keep showing up.
Yeah.
And being consistent and not wavering, not changing, not flipping the script every time something new pops up, but just being consistent. And I hope this has been helpful for a few people. I know that the first time you and I talked about this together, it was really kind of insightful. I remember we had a conversation about a year and a half ago about Like, man, we're really allowing our decisions to be based on just like how we feel on any particular day.
Yeah.
And, it's amazing how when you do that, you end up in debt and you end up just like not going on the direction and the path that you want to go. It's funny how it's just super easy to do what you feel like doing, and life just begins to unravel itself all around you. But then you do the things that are really tough and really hard and not easy and not simple, and life seems to improve. It's kind of a weird, like, why can't it be the opposite? Like, why can't it just, like, the natural things that come into my head be what is going to, like, help me,
I mean,
I wish it were that way.
yeah, that would be heaven. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish it were that way, but unfortunately it is not. At least for me. Maybe it is for somebody. If that's you, hit me up, because I would love to know you.
Send us a DM.
And I would love for scientists to scan your brain and give me a report on how I can be like you.
Oh, gosh. So, in other news, we're going through the book of Revelation in our Patreon. If anybody wants to join us, it's going to be incredible, because often a lot of people shy away from reading that book, but we're excited.
Talking about the bowls, the scrolls, talking about buckets, and what are that, cherubim? Is that what they're called?
Angels,
yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah,
That's what they are.
There's cherubim in there too. Yeah. Talking about a lot of stuff.
Yep. Dragons.
Bowls, scrolls, buckets,
Horses.
dragons, fire, lakes.
Anyway, it kind of sounds like a mythology type book, but it's not. But we're excited about it. If you guys want to join our Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/Nick and Chelsea, and we'll link it down below as well. But there is 2 different tiers that we have. We have a $5 tier which gets you access to our community, where you just talk with us on Discord.
All
and
our content's early. This podcast comes out early for that tier.
I try my best to get out everything early, but it doesn't always happen. Thankful for grace. But the $15 tier is the Bible study, and all of that goes right back into producing this podcast.
Dude, it's been growing.
Yeah,
it's been fun.
Yeah,
it's like being really, really fun.
It is.
I just enjoy that group. It just gets so raw and real.
We look forward to it.
Yeah, and I would love to have you jump in and join us as well.
Well, we appreciate you guys. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you in the next episode.